I think there's a mindset in setting yourself up and being attractive. And by attractive, I mean characteristics and qualities, like genuine, showing respect, showing hard work. When I meet someone that's like this, it's attractive in a sense, and it makes me want to work with them. So I would say that's the key.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Headliner Mindset Podcast, and Happy New Year. This is the first episode of the year, and I'm excited to be back. I took the month of December off from releasing episodes and took a nice, much-needed break. Actually really unplugged, had some really good downtime, some really good family time. I hope that you guys had a chance to unplug and rest and reset a little bit. But we're back, baby. 2025 has officially begun, so let's fucking get it. Now, my guest for this week is one half of the Grammy-nominated duo SIDEPIECE. He's been doing incredibly well with that project. Those guys are touring all over the world, producing huge hits, making incredible house music. His solo project is something I'm a huge fan of because if you know me, you know that I'm a big metalhead, and he has been bringing the worlds of metal and emo music together with electronic music. He's created this incredible brand called Alt Rave, where they've been starting to throw parties in LA, and just is up to a lot of really cool, exciting stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please be sure to follow or subscribe if you haven't done so yet. We've got new episodes coming out every Monday. Now, without further ado, this is Nitti. What's up, brother? Welcome to the show. Stoked to have you here, man.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me, man. Absolutely.
You know, I'd briefly met you, ran into you once or twice backstage at SIDEPIECE shows. I did an awesome interview with your manager, Corinne. For anyone that hasn't checked out that episode, if you guys want to get a straight up just masterclass on the music business, go back and listen to that episode. Corinne is a fucking badass. But you are, you know, one half of the duo SIDEPIECE, which we'll talk about. But you guys just seem like you're fucking everywhere. You guys have been to Austin already like a couple times, multiple times, been able to see you out here. But I just feel like every time I am somewhere, I'm like, oh, you guys are playing here and you guys are playing here. Been all over the place.
Yeah, it's been a busy year, man. Grateful for that.
You were saying you literally just flew back to LA like just this morning at 5 a.m. and are just back at it.
Yeah. My eyes are giving it away, but no, I just had like an early flight, and after shows sometimes you stay up so late that it's like I had a little melatonin, right? Fell asleep nice and early, but then I ended up waking up at like 2 a.m. and had a flight at 7, so I just like went for a run and then just got to the airport. So I feel fine. I know my body's a little fatigued, but hey, it comes with the territory.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, before we dive into all of that, I'm really curious about where this all started for you, right? Like, when did you start making music? Tell me about like the beginning of that journey. What got you into it? Let's start from there. I want to hear a bit about your story.
Yeah, I think early on I was always picking up like a keyboard. My dad had a little dinky, like I don't even remember what brand, to be honest, like one of those things that I learned, like Let It Be by the Beatles, and then a guitar. I just kind of picked up every little instrument. I kind of settled on drums. That was my favorite instrument, and I talked to a lot of producers actually that are drummers for some reason. I feel like that's a big instrument that gets people in.
Yeah, that's where it started for me too. 10 years old, man, just fucking got my first set and was off to the races. Yep.
Yeah, drums is we might have even talked about that, but yeah, I feel like a lot of people say that when they make music, like for some reason there's a lot of drummers that end up producing because I don't know what it is, but so eventually I grew up in the church and played like in the church, kind of got some chops from that, and then eventually like joined some bands, and then I just got the whole entrepreneurial side of it, I guess I would say, where you just are like, I'm out working, other people, and it gets annoying to be relying on 4 other band members, this and that. And I was like, I'm going to try producing. Electronic music is always been something I like, seems like something I can try and create. And yeah, that kind of just took me down an entire, the last 15 years of my life, pretty much, for better or for worse. But I think honestly, and overall, key is just like I always joke, like I'm pretty sure I probably have some form of ADHD or autism where I can just hyper focus, like genuinely. I probably could be diagnosed, but I use it as a superpower, I guess, and I can just hyper focus. So I feel that with producing, I mean, I guess at this point almost anything you need to be good at in your career, you probably need that type of focus. But specifically for music production, that focus kind of took me from just playing instruments to like releasing music, finding managers. That's kind of what the whole beginning was of actually becoming a producer, DJ, was once I stopped just making music and kind of like, focusing and honing in on sounds and stuff. That's when it really started to be less of a hobby and more of a career, I guess I'd say.
Yeah. When was that moment where you realized that you really wanted to take it seriously and pursue it professionally more than just as a hobby?
Yeah, so I dropped out of FIU. It's a school in Miami, and I moved there just kind of not really knowing what I was going to major in. Never even picked a major. Did like 2 or 3 semesters, and then I asked my parents. I was like, "Hey, like, we can either spend 20 grand on this stupid degree, or probably more. I don't even like that's how long it's been that I know nothing about college anymore. But I think when I went, it was about somewhere it was gonna equal that with the loans and whatever. And I was like, there's this other program that's like 18 or whatever however I sold them on it. And I was like, yeah, it's $18,000. It's this associates or something with music, and I'm not just going in there thinking like my degree will get me somewhere. I want to learn and actually just pursue it. I don't think it's just about the degree with music. I just need to get in there and meet people, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of called it, and it worked. And it wasn't necessarily that the school was like taught me everything. It's just that I met somebody I work with till this day, Michael Sellers. He's pretty much my tour manager, but he's part of my management team as well. But he travels with me all the time. We used to like always joke around like, yeah, one day we're gonna tour, and now look at us, we're just like dead tired from over touring. So it's like it's funny how it like that was that moment where once I went to that school and I took it seriously and risked dropping out of school, that little bit of that moment, I'm sure you've had it with doing something in the industry where you have to like quit something normal to do something.
Totally.
And that, I think when I took that risk, it taught me how to take risks and how to not be worried, which granted, like every creative's always like, how am I gonna, there was many years after that where I was still eating crackers, as my manager Cheryl says, where it's like we weren't, there's even to this day, like I tour all the time when we're blessed enough to be some of the people that get paid well to do this, and there's still times where you're like, oh shit, like I need to really lock in so I can make some money this year because we spent a lot, and it's just overhead, and so it's just always like that. But yeah, that I think going to school solidified. I was like, I have to do this for real. Like I can't be fucking around anymore.
Yeah. Where'd you go? What school was that?
It's called SAE, School of Audio Engineering.
Oh yeah.
There's one in Miami. I think there's one in LA.
Yeah.
Probably New York.
Yeah. I've heard of them. I worked at Icon for a long time. I was I helped.
Oh yeah.
I helped build Icon for like 7 years. So that was like where I was there for a long time and helped a lot with that program. So I was come from the education space, I guess you could say, in a way.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah.
I know so many. I mean, my like generation age was like the company Wooly. I remember my friend Adair, like a bunch of these other dubstep kids coming up. They were like the second or third class of like the Nightmares, the
waves,
Jaws, right?
Yeah,
the couple waves. I remember them
for sure. You talked about being really like locked in with music production, being able to really sit down and focus, which I honestly think a lot of people kind of struggle with and are challenged by. Like, how much would you say you were producing in those days when you were coming up? Like, how many hours were you putting in on a daily or weekly basis?
It was a lot, man. It's like I always tell people, and I think you could probably attest to this, because you're literally in the scene too, is like there's a point where you have to overdo it. You have to really be that if you want to, I watch like the Chris Bumstead stuff, and he's like, I overdo my body and I know it's not good, but I'm just doing it to win and do it. And then when he comes off, he's like, yeah, I know this isn't sustainable. My body needs to rest now. And it's like the same thing. I've spent, probably 2 to 3 years of just almost every day. Like I didn't have a PlayStation back then. My studio didn't have internet in it. There's just all these things that I secluded myself and kind of isolated myself in a way just to get to the point where I could then, go out and people notice. And then, now obviously I'm engaged and I play video games or, whatever hobby. I'm into cars and, I can play with Lego sometimes, right? But, there was a point where even more than, now that I was just every single waking hour that I could possibly take.
Yeah.
You know, I read Goggins. I'm sure, like, you know, a lot of people that are in competitive spaces have, you know, read people like that. And I love when he says, he's like, motivation is shit. Because you could be motivated and it just, you know, that's like a little Band-Aid. But a true 10-year process, you would just understand this is going to hurt and I'm going to get through it. And that's kind of where I've been a few times. And even actually right now, recently, I felt like I kind of reignited a bit of that, which is good but I do think there's such thing as burnout, and, you know, taking time to hang out with friends and family and relax is important. But people will use that as excuse, like, oh, I have to chill now. It's like, no, I'll be honest. I did have a 2 to 3 year period of, maybe even longer, maybe even 4 years, to be honest, of like almost no contact type of shit. Like I was just no girlfriend, no this, no that. Like maybe once every 2 weeks I would hang out with people. But
yeah, I like to ask that question because it's such a common story that I see from artists that are really at that level where they're, you know, touring full time and like really at a certain stage in their career, is like they had to put in the fucking time up front, the energy up front. And when I think back to the guys that I saw from Icon that killed it, I remember, you know, Mac J being in there like 10 hours a day, just like in a corner on his laptop, seeing Jaws doing the same thing. Like any of those guys, it was like this relentless obsession with making music and learning how to make music. And to be honest, I see a lot of people now that I think are kind of trying to skip that step. They're like, oh, I've been producing for like a year or two, kind of, you know, taking it, you know, seriously in quotes. And now I'm like, okay, how do I make content and how do I get myself out there? And it's like, well, are you even making good shit yet? You know? And this is something I've been really reflecting on a lot, is just like, where's the quality of music in the first place? Like, do you actually have something that really is good, you know? And you know, making music, I think, is becoming easier in a lot of ways. You know, there's a lot of shit that you can download, and now we got AI tools and things like that coming out. But it's like, I think in terms of mindset, you know, that for everyone that I've seen, everyone that I know that really is out there, that's a full-time artist, that's actually really killing it in the game, they had that same phase where it was like 2 or 3 years of like, I'm locking myself in the room and I'll fucking come out when in a couple years when I'm done, and I won't see you until then. Like, so I just really want to, really emphasize that, man, because I don't think you get to skip that step.
It's hard because you get a lot of like instant gratification. I mean, even my era still was a little bit more instant gratification than, say, Calvin Harris or, you know, the Skrillex era, where it's like, you know, we essentially just got faster and quicker and move on from artists quicker and faster. So people can suck essentially and have one little edit blow up, and then they forget the rest of the step, where it's like, oh shit, to really be solidified in the scene, you can't just have one little edit or one little remix. So
yeah, you actually have to be talented.
For sure, you have to have talent. But I think I agree more with what you said, where it's like people don't put that work and front load enough to be able to ride out there. You know, if you want to be able to coast eventually, and by coast I mean, you know, sometimes, like, I don't think you can ever, we're past the days where it's like legacy acts. I mean, you have to absolutely fucking blow to ever coast again. Like, where there's just too many people doing it now. Like, I don't think that exists, or well, it probably won't exist anymore after, you know, whatever, the last 10 years before us. There was not many legacy acts left. So it takes even more, I think, of, you know, even as SIDEPIECE or as Nitti, I feel like we're always reinventing. We always have to stay hot. We also have to stay on our toes. And it doesn't matter if you have a big hit, or, you know, you got to have fucking 10 hits, and then after those run out, you got to do 10 more. It's just really a crazy thing about the amount of people we have that are all talented now. So you know.
So earlier you mentioned having kind of an entrepreneurial mindset when it came to splitting off from being in bands, which is also such a common story of like, I got to rely on 4 other people to make music with me. And then I discovered that I could just do it all on my own on a laptop, right? Did you also have a natural sort of entrepreneurial mindset when it came to the business side of being an artist also? Like, did you really have your sights set on that?
I'm not so much of a straight up like entrepreneur. I would say the work ethic is where I feel like an entrepreneur. I very much relied on my managers and, you know, team members around me or people that I trust to handle and deal with those things. And I will say that is one thing I'm probably the most lucky in, is that I've had a team from the beginning and I've never changed that team. I have literally only added people to the team. So I've just never had a moment where I'm like, this person screwed me over and I had to fire him. I've just never had that. And that saved a lot of headache. So I'd say most of my luck, to be completely honest, has come from having good people around me. I mean, in my eyes, I view it kind of, I'm more of a believer. So I always feel like the more that I kind of like surrender, like God presents me with the right people, or at least presents me with my own, mental fortitude to be, able to selectively be like, yes, this is the right person. And I think that's a big piece of it. That point is just so important to me about like, that is a piece, or I do feel bad for a lot of people where it's like building teams because someone wants to get a get rich quick scheme and a label offer and this and that. That's almost, just as important, 50% besides my musical talent. That really is the other 50% right there, is the squad, the team.
And that is part of being an entrepreneur though as well. Like Nitti is your business at the end of the day, right? You do choose who are the people that are working for, your company in a sense. And that's something I'm still trying to learn, is like, how to collaborate and delegate and, pass stuff off to other people, surround yourself with the right people, understand that like I might be paying this person and investing, money here, but we're going to make more money if I do that. I think that's the stage of entrepreneurship for a lot of people. That's hard, of like, all right, I'm going to start, as they say, you got to spend money to make money. Like I'm still kind of resistant to that. I'm like, oh, I know I need to be hiring people to do this shit, but I'm just going to grind through and do it myself, when really at the end of the day, it's probably way more worth it to, start hiring other people. So
that type of leadership, that's one thing I think I've learned from, is even though I might not be the one that's the best with, say, the physical business and actually choosing exactly, certain business moves, is that I think like when you're the head of something, or the artist yourself, like there's a type of leadership that it takes. And I think a lot of times I find it being a lot easier to have a nice balance of, I want to use the word like surrender necessarily, but like when you're able to show your own team that you're like, hey, like I'm not here to boss you around, I'm here to lead. And a lot of the best leaders, I think lead with the form of, I'm here doing it with you. And it doesn't take away from delegating and offering up, but it's like there's a piece of it where I find getting more respect and more appreciation from people. Like, wow, he went like, so I feel like my whole team does this, where we'll like do other people's jobs just because we know the person's busy. And, say I have to, obviously I have a set to prepare and this and that and whatever, but if I can book the peer space to take it off my TM's hands, or vice versa, if he can actually load my USB for me, which is technically my job, we're just kind of washing each other's hands when one person's, pants are down in a sense. So it's like, to me, that has always come back to help me the most, is when I'm like, oh, I have a team that will go above and beyond, because I think they see that I also go above and beyond. And it's like very much an equal effort.
I just love that idea of, something I've been reflecting on a lot lately just in my own life, is just the idea of playing team, right? When you have somebody and other people that you're working with, it's like the goal is for the team to win, and so we're all going to do whatever we possibly can, by any means necessary, to make sure that we all win together. And sometimes we can lose sight of that, so it's like, especially in like relationships, like I always come back to that. It's just like, hey, like we're on the same team, we're having a challenge right now, all right, it's me and you versus the challenge. We're playing team here, right?
It's a relationship, man. It's legit. Like it's interesting, and then when you get closer, you become like family, and then that has its own issues. But to me, there's a lot of value in building it a way where you can have both. And I've learned the other way too, where you never want that to mess up with the business or get too deep in there. So there's balances, but it's important.
So let me ask you this, because I think there's a lot of artists out there that are trying to find their manager, maybe calling in a manager, wanting to build a team. Were you already having success, and I know that that's a very loose term, before you found your manager? Like, what was going on in your career at that time, and when did you start to kind of see success, right?
The last answer kind of also answers this in a sense of where I feel that I definitely wasn't popping off in any way. I don't even think the music I was making was too incredible at all. I wasn't like happy. I've done placements for other artists, and it was even before this where I found my first manager, Cheryl. And I think it was more of an attitude thing where I think she just felt or saw in me, and we kind of saw in each other. We're like, oh, this is someone that will literally make this work.
Mm-hmm.
There's no option, but we will work hard enough to make this work.
Yeah.
And that attitude is what I think was valuable. And even then when we kept building and my other manager, Paul, and then Corinne and Mike and all these other people on my team, and even my lawyers, my attorneys, like pretty much every single one has been, I think, from attracting it, not like we have times sometimes where we go and we find, but honestly, like even how I found my photographer, videographer that I've been working with the last like year or two, it's the same thing. It's always been like I played a random show, saw him, he was like, yo, that clip was sick, I sent to you, and I saw his work and I was like, this is dope, I'm attracted to what you have. And it was just this like equal thing. And I don't just call it lucky though. I think there's a mindset in setting yourself up and being attractive. And by attractive, I mean characteristics and qualities, like genuine, showing respect, showing hard work, showing that, you're not a psycho or a diva or whatever these, artist things, or, even something as simple as like drinking too much, addicted to drugs. Like, I mean that with no judgment. I drank a lot in my career and I just stopped. And it's like, I've noticed the difference personally where I'm like, wow, this is even another thing I can say when I meet someone that's like this. It's attractive in a sense, and it makes me want to work with them. So I would say that's the key, is make yourself, it's kind of a life lesson at this point, but it really works for music industry people. Because when you attract the people that are getting lit and you were lit when you met them, what happens when you guys are sober? You get what I'm saying? Like, I'm scared of waking up the next day and this guy was like, okay, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I was on super high on whatever, and now I was excited. But it's like, not that you, granted, you can 100% do whatever you want, and I know people that have fun and they can work hard. So it's really not even a judgment. I think a lot of people present themselves a certain way and they attract what they present, but they're not realizing how they're presenting themselves. Yeah. And I made myself, I feel like, attractive to the type of people I wanted around me, and I've never had to change because from the beginning I was a certain way, hardworking, this, that, and then they were all the same. Yeah. And I never had to second guess myself. I've never had to been like, oh, I stole someone's manager. Now, it's kind of like a cheating thing where it's like, if you were the person that was taking the person from their partner, one of you is probably going to repeat that cycle. So, it's like a lot of managers I see where they're like, they steal an artist and then the artist ditches them, or vice versa. They're like, hey, I'm even better than your artist. And then they go put all their eggs in the other person, and they just do this switch off because of success, and they see all these stuff, and like, it can work. It's just a lot of times I see that stuff fall apart because of how you started and how you attracted them in the first place. You know what I mean? So
totally. Yeah, no, I love that idea of attracting rather than chasing. A lot of us are chasing. I'm chasing the relationship. I'm chasing the label. I'm chasing, the artist support or whatever. And when you get so aligned with who you are, like we are, just to get woo-woo, everybody that has been listening to this show knows I get fucking woo-woo all the time on here, but like, not even from a woo-woo perspective, from a scientific perspective, we know that everything is energy, right? Like, I literally am just made up of energy, of billions of atoms, and that energy is vibrating at a certain frequency, and like we live energetically, in a certain type of frequency, and that frequency attracts other frequencies that are on the same frequency, right? So if you're in a certain headspace, if you're in a certain energy, you're partying a lot or whatever it may be, like, you're going to attract other people that are on that same kind of tip, But when you are also really grounded, really hardworking, you have those qualities and those characteristics, you got a good fucking mindset, you're actually working on yourself, taking care of yourself, you're going to see those kind of people show up in your life almost just magically. It's like, oh, where did this person come from? Well, we're just magnets, and we're going to pull things towards us that are similar to us.
Yeah, it's definitely natural selection, I'd say, of that. Like that's, and what's interesting is you do want both sides of it. Like when we play, for instance, like SIDEPIECE, like we like house music to be a party on stage, and when we post clips of like all of us partying on stage, we do want to attract that type of person, right?
Yeah.
But I might, as an artist, not want to necessarily attract a manager that's doing that. That's fine though.
Yeah.
It's just there's sections for each type of place you're attracting, because it's like, I don't want to throw people off. Like it's like I only hang out with people. It's like, no, we do. We have a great time on stage, but those people aren't necessarily managing us. You know what I mean? Those people are having fun.
Yeah.
They're good at having fun, and they probably go home and they have their own job, but that's their release. Versus my people, their release is elsewhere because, when they come to a show, it's usually few and far in between, and we have a great time, but essentially they're still working for us the rest of the time. And that's where I think people get mixed up with like, oh, I go to shows and I'm going to connect. And I'm like, just pick it.
Yeah.
Either party that night or connect that night. You know what I mean? Mixing them sometimes is difficult. And it's I think someone I think has like kind of mentored me in a way, because I've always had a publishing deal with him, is Diplo. And he's like, a master at, slipping in and out of cultures and crowds in a genuine way, and then also not getting caught up by just getting lit with people. And it's like there's a lot of different ways I've seen, maybe even like a David Guetta or a Tiesto, where like they're older and they know over time, they're like, to me, they know that it's like, yeah, it's important to really be a part of the fun and have fun, but not get sucked into the fun. You know what I mean? It's like there is two sides as an artist or a manager, where it's like, yeah, I'm not saying not to have fun, but a lot of these guys that have done well for a long time found their balance.
Totally. Yeah, you gotta know yourself. You gotta know yourself and where you're at. I'm the kind of person where it's like, if I'm partying, and I'm just gonna be a fucking mess, and it's like I'm gonna be lost in that. So I'm just like, okay, I know.
But then you don't go try and do official business while you're like that, which is that's what I'm trying to say.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's important to have your nights out, you know what I mean? Like you still gotta have fun, whatever that may be, whatever that looks like for you, But there is a difference, and I remember I got tore up on fucking Threads for literally saying this a while back, where I was just like, you got to make that decision, especially as an artist. Again, I've talked to so many of them where I'm like, okay, you're saying you want this dream, but like you're still going to every festival and getting fucked up and spending all your money, like still being like a raver, And it's like, I don't ever want anyone to lose touch with that culture, and you should still go have fun, but you also got to get serious. It took you those 2 or 3 years of making music every single fucking day to actually like get in and get to that place where you are on stage rather than in the crowd. There's a level of relentless dedication that it takes, and I think a lot of people are actually kind of kidding themselves of how seriously they're taking it, especially if you're just going out and partying every weekend. I think it's great to go out every weekend, but like when you go out, shake some fucking hands, meet the promoter, meet the talent booker, like network with the right people, and find that balance. It's not black and white, it's not all or nothing, but I've met more than enough people that are caught up kind of in the partying scene and like not being honest with themselves about it.
Yeah, that's really the key. I mean, you can slot into the two sides of, the guy that really enjoys partying and they have to put some effort in to be a little bit less. And then there's people, I lean more towards the other side, where I actually really enjoy my time at home. I love my studio. I love making music. I like video games.
Totally.
I like going on walks, when I'm at home, but I have to also make an effort to be social. And like, obviously on stage, it's really easy for me to have fun. That's never a problem. But, say, again, bringing up Diplo, he's really good at this. Is like that dude will just go to any and everyone's party. And, he invited me to like Madonna show one time just because he enjoys the music. And I'm like, I really learned. I was like, it is important just to get out there and experience other people's things and not live in your own little touring world. And that's where I've actually had to come from that side and pull over into that.
And that it brings up another issue too, which is, a lot of people love making music and are like studio people, and like that is the thing that they want to do the most. And there's this almost natural idea that like, okay, well, to make money, then I also got to be a DJ and tour the world. And like, that's a whole different fucking ball game. As you know, you're coming home at 5 a.m. today on flights, it's just like that lifestyle actually isn't for everybody, and not everybody really wants to be in clubs all the time too. And it's important for people to kind of get serious about like, what do you want your career as a music producer to look like? Like DJing and producing music are two separate things. And it might be that like you don't necessarily want to be the one. I have two buddies, good friends of mine, are in an Afro house project called And Friends, and one of the guys just tours. He's the face of it, and the other guy is like, he's not a ghost producer. Like, he literally is.
He's just a part of it.
He's a part of it. He's just at home. He's got a wife and a kid, and he's making all the music. He's like, you go out, you tour. We make money doing that. I'm home making music, and it works out. They just figured out like what actually suits their lifestyle and what they both want.
That's advice I would fully stand behind. Is like, if you can kind of find honestly what part of it, because now it's not as easy as it used to be to just kind of, we talk about this in SIDEPIECE all the time, because that's the biggest team I'm a part of, because it's technically two artists, two management teams, two of everything, because we joined forces. And we realize it's been great though to finally give everybody one job and do that job really well, because so many people are just so good at everything that they're niche in, that being the little Renaissance man is just harder than ever. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's like, it takes a Goggins like unbeatable person to succeed at that in this day and age, because most people are just like, I'm going to be the best at Afro House, I'm going to be the best at this. And like, we realize that on my team, even just me as like Nitti, like I started getting like even more and more niche, I would say, just because I enjoy alternative rock and metal and those types of sounds, and I've always gravitated towards them the most. We kind of all sat down. I was like, hey, if I'm being honest, like, this is what I really feel I'm best at if I'm in the group, and we have to admit what our strength, and I was like, this is the one I love the most and best at, and it made everything easier. And now I'm just having kind of a blast almost doing Alt Rave and all these types of things that are just like directly up my lane now than ever before, because I've been so kind of all over the place in the past, which is also really fun, to be honest. But
so let's talk about that, because that's actually really why I got really fucking pumped to have you on, because I am a huge metalhead. And
sick.
And then I just saw what you'd been doing recently. I'd seen you just kind of popping up. I was like, oh, this guy's doing some fucking really sick metal electronic hybrid stuff. So tell me a little bit more about that decision, because that's kind of been more really in like this last year or so for you, right? That you like kind of really started bringing in some of those metal influences. And tell me about what that creative decision was all about for you.
So originally, I'm just pulling it up like it's going to be like crappy quality, but I had this, I just love how it was natural, but I have this post where like it's just a Linkin Park remix, right? And like, you can eventually show it, but let me see. It's at almost 10 million views, like 500,000 likes. And not that I care about likes at all, but it just kind of was this sense of like, oh, wow, there's an entire crowd of people, that love alternative rock and metal.
Yeah.
And granted, I don't even think I'm the first person to do it. Keizo, Sullivan King, Murata, like there's so many dope people doing it, right? But just my personal version and style was always leaning a little more towards the new metal or emo-ish or alternative, whatever. So that was what I felt for a very long time. I was like, man, I would love to just settle into that. And after I put that remix out, then I followed it up with like a Slipknot one. And I think we might have talked about that one too. I can't remember if the last time we hung out that was out or not. Probably not. But there's a couple like just follow-ups I did, and I was like, you know what? This feels right. Like, let me really just kind of like keep trying this. And then the more I created my own personal Nitti music modeled after those remixes, the better the response was. And it just kind of set me free. Like, I'm so glad my journey led me to be able to produce, a lot of different types of music. And I still, like I said, my publishing deal with Diplo is working on whatever he's working on. And if he's working on, you brought up Afro House. I worked with him on Major Lazer and Major League DJs. And Major League DJs are like South African. It's even deeper than Afro House. It's like I'm a Piano, which is like the dopest, chillest Afro House ever. Like that's, to me, some of the roots, like the Black Coffee and deeper. And I mean deeper by saying like just, a little bit more, I think, into that genre in a good way. But it's like Nitti would never release that, right? So it's always giving me these avenues, and I've been distracted by them. And that's just me being blatantly honest, that I realize now, getting older, I was like, oh, it was an ego thing, where because I could do it, it made me feel cool. It made me feel wanted or cool, whatever it is. It was feeding my ego, where I was like, I know how to do this. I'm competitive. I can produce anything, right?
Yeah.
And once I stopped feeding it, I was kind of presented with like opportunities like this Linkin Park remix or things that kind of told me like this was the right direction. Because as a kid, like growing up listening to Brand New, Taking Back Sunday, Senses Fail, A Day to Remember, Suicide Silence, all that remains, just anything from Bring Me the Horizon all the way up to, Coldplay, just still rock and heavy. And I don't know, there's just so many bands where I just was like, man, how can I turn these genres into, a DJable thing? And I just did a party called Grave Rave with the Emo Night guys. And, they were also another big inspiration where I saw them just like really having fun up there. And, they've also moved into also playing a good amount of electronic music, but they kind of just started playing emo music. He said he misses the days where they would literally just drop DJ sets of emo songs. They didn't really care about edits and this like that, which I think is so cool for them. And, now he's able to do both because, there's a genuine future for DJing alternative metal or rock with electronic music now. And that's kind of what I'm just most excited about. And also, being able to put my own voice on it and sing and write the lyrics and play the guitar and write the drums. It's just something where I get to do the entire thing again and collaborate with other rock singers, people that can scream like monster, just that has just always been something I've wanted to work with. So
yeah,
finally I feel like where I'm supposed to be with that kind of like, brutal honesty where I'm like, yeah, I was definitely just doing stuff because I could. And I think a lot of people do that and it's hard for them to admit it.
Totally.
I'm just finally at the point where I can admit it and it makes it easier now. Now I'm like, yep, I did it. No problem. It doesn't hurt me anymore because, I'm sure I would be worried if people thought that about me before. And I'm like, no, it's not true. I just, but yeah, it's true. No problem. I moved on.
Do you think that having so much success with the SIDEPIECE project has kind of granted you that freedom to be a little bit more experimental in your personal project and take some risks and stuff?
I think, to be honest, like what happened was that out of seemingly nowhere, we still kind of worked on it for two years before on my mind, to be honest, or maybe a year and a half. So it's still seemingly fast, but the plan never really was that it was going to overtake the touring, but naturally it happened and it just got bigger and bigger and more fun for us that it actually I think in a way saved my Nitti, I won't say career, because like I could have made once you do it, you know how to make money out of it. I wasn't really chasing that anymore. I was like, how do I save it from being another thing I'm not proud of, I guess? And to me, SIDEPIECE kind of is a great indicator where it really was so big, it made me have to choose. If I'm going to do this, I have to love it. And because I tour so much with SIDEPIECE, when I do spend time making Nitti and doing Alt Rave stuff, I'm fully invested in and in love with it. And then I can easily drop it and go tour in SIDEPIECE because I'm not leaving behind something I'm so worried about and like, oh, what genre? Oh, I can't, before it was like overwhelming because of the amount of stress of, what genre, what's popping now? What's this? What's that? And, both of the projects now are just a little bit more timeless, I would say, in a sense where like, I'm just not worried about it moving, changing, or, people keep being like, yeah, rock is super hot right now. I'm like, I don't really care if rock's coming back right now, and if it's hot for 2 years and then it dips, I'm not going anywhere. I'm in it for a long haul. Like I've wanted to do this forever, so I'm fully committed to it. So it's like whether it's hot or not. Same thing with SIDEPIECE. Like if people are like, oh, Fisher Tech House was in 2018 and whatever, it's like we don't care. We love house music for house music, and that evolves. So it doesn't sound like 2018, and we update our sound and our things obviously to keep up, but house music will never go anywhere. We love how, like, that's something timeless to me. And that's what I feel like it finally unlocked that for Nitti, where I was like, what's that timeless feeling for me? It's always been rock and metal. So it almost saved it, I would say, even though it overtook time and, touring. But it helped, actually, because it really put in perspective, if I'm doing this, it's because I love it. Because if not, I wouldn't make time for it, you know?
So it sounds like you were getting a little lost with the Nitti project for a while, of just kind of trying to figure out, like, how do I make this thing successful and put food on the table with it?
Yeah, it's also, I would say I get really, that focus is, a double-edged sword. And if I really want to, and I try my hardest every day to get away from my ego these days. But so when I say this, I don't mean in an arrogant way, but like, it's a blessing and a curse that if I really put my mind something, I can usually make it work.
Yeah.
And that's hard because if I like, when TikTok first started, I remember I was one of the first people to post like little producer TikToks where it's like, hit the can and do this. Like, I remember like TikTok like reposted me, and then everybody was like hitting me up like, yo, what's like, how did you do that? They were asking me all these questions because I like went viral, and I was like, I just had these homies help me, and then I figured it out. And it was just, from then I just knew what to do. But that in turn led down a whole nother path of, just because I figured it out, it wasn't the right stuff. Whereas now, how I'm solidified in Nitti, I don't really chase that virality and those things. And it's just put into perspective, I would say, a lot of those things. Because, it gets hard when as an entrepreneur, I'm sure like Gary Vee could say this, where like, or people that have multiple styles that they could do inside of a business. They're like, he's like, I could probably make a business for selling lights, Christmas lights or something, but he doesn't love it. You know what I mean? You see what I'm saying? It's like that kind of was me with TikTok and music. I was like, if I really want to, I could probably make some crappy viral thing, but I would be so unhappy with it. And to keep that up every day to make crappy, you know what I mean? That's like, to me, that's not enjoyable. For sure, someone else can do it and love it, but it was like, I would always come down and write rock music on my guitar, and I was like, okay, this settles it,
Well, that's what I always say is the difference between being a producer and being an artist. Is, as a producer, you understand the math and science of how to produce music, right? It is just math and science. And again, it's like, now it's like AI can make music. There's a formula that you can plug in, and there's certain genres with certain tempos, with certain scales, with certain, modalities or whatever. And it really is an intellectual process that and that's great. Like, you need to be a good producer. That's why you got to sit down for 2 or 3 years and put in fucking 10 hours a day and just like, all right, I got to figure out the intellectual side of this. But being an artist is when you also bring in your heart and your soul. And like, I bring in my fucking energy and my passion and my self-expression and that part that just lives deeper inside of me, right? There's a real energy there that I think it's kind of like, it's duality. It's like the yin and yang. When you can bring both of those together is when you can create your best stuff. I recently had a kind of a big breakthrough around that, because I have an online coaching program that I do for artists, and I've ran it for the last year, and it's been rad. Built such an incredible community for it. And now I'm really motivated to just make it better. And I'm like, I want to take this thing to the next level. I want to like bring in more content, more lessons and stuff. And so I started working with ChatGPT, and I'm like, okay, here's my program. Here's like all the lessons. Here's everything. And ChatGPT is amazing. And we're sitting down and breaking it down. We could do these lessons and these exercises and all this stuff. And after, I was like, man, something's still missing. It's just still missing. And then I realized, I'm like, oh, it was taking the heart and soul out of it for me, which for me, like my energy, my vibe, my swag, the thing that Nick Cherwin can bring to the world that nobody else can, is like my sort of woo-woo side that likes to go deep and talk about energy and manifestation and all this shit that like ChatGPT was just like not fucking with it. It was just like, okay, well, here's your marketing and here's your branding lessons and here's all this stuff. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to take a little bit of that, but it needs to have that fucking oomph. It needs to have that feeling, right? And so I think if we're trying to really be artists, like we got to find that first. And like, okay, cool. Now let me add the math and the science, and like, okay, like you said, how to make money as an artist. Okay, cool. I know how to put out tracks and fucking play shows and do all of that, but that can't be the thing that we're leading with. The thing we got to lead with is like, all right, what lights you the fuck up? Find that, follow that, all right? And then we can build some strategy around it.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's like, someone like a Porter Robinson, right? When you listen to like World, I mean, even all his stuff, it's not even like, oh, old Porter Robinson. No, pretty much all his music. Flume is another good example where it's electronic, but those electronic sounds have heart and soul like it's a fucking instrument.
Yeah.
And that to me is like a clear difference of, maybe some of my crappier future-based remix compared to Flume. I'll admit it. I don't even have to bring anyone else under the bus. My crappy future-based remix of something compared to a Flume or a Porter Robinson track, that's where I would say the difference is. There's a heart and soul of what they put in to get the sweat and tears of that synth or whatever that weird something they did that was even more creative was the difference. We did all the same techniques. I used the super saw, some trap drums, whatever. The real difference was that heart and soul, like you're talking about. And it's like a lot of people get frustrated when they learn the little techniques, and then they're like, why isn't this so dope and super cool? And it's like, it's the one part you can't teach.
Yeah.
It's literally the one part you cannot teach.
Well, I think that's cool with you getting into the metal side of things, where it's like, okay, like playing an actual guitar, getting your hands on the instrument, right? Actually singing. Nobody can emulate your voice or your lyrics, you know, like that live musicianship, I think, always has an advantage because there's just a different way of putting your energy and your heart and soul into it, which is 100%. Different than just sound designing a fucking Serum sound or something, you know?
Yeah. There's a lot of fun to be had. I mean, I'm working with an actual metal producer right now who he's done so much, like just bands that I like, and he was like, oh yeah, we can get this sounding like more like the bands that I produce. Like I was like, yeah, I don't want the drums to sound like an EDM guy. I was like, I want to legit sound like both worlds are perfect. Like, I'm really good at electronic music, but I want like, and it's not that my metal or my rock is so bad, but there's just a little level of polish that I have more on the electronic. And I was like, my goal is not to like, I mean, you know what I'm talking about. As a real metalhead, you could hear, when you hear like, you know, Thy Art Is Murder, and then you hear a dubstep person do that. There's a difference, and it just sounds a little crappier, a little, you know, computerized, a little bit. And my goal is like, I'm tired of that. I was like, we have the technology and the talent today for people to be like this with both. Like, that's kind of my goal, is to like legitimately, when I press play on the song, the rock part slaps live, and then the drop slaps. And it's not just like a shitty edit. Because I'm like, I'm tired of that. You know what I mean? That's kind of where I've been at, where like I try to produce my rock and band and vocal parts as high quality as my EDM dance parts. And I think that's what's going to win over a lot of, you hear, you know, because you're one of the people that does dance and metal and pays attention to it. You see those old heads that are like, you can't touch the original record. And granted, I get where they're coming from. I'm just trying to then do it so good that they can't even say anything. You know what I mean? Where it's like, I think eventually we'll get there. I mean, there's some people you'll never be able to change their mind. And I don't care, but
I love hearing you say that, because I've said a very similar thing many times. Just as a fan, I haven't yet seen anybody bring those sounds sonically. They've brought the styles together, but actually getting the mix to really sit right, you know, where it's like, it's got that nice, like chunky metal side, you know, but it's like, it's either, I'll hear stuff that it's like, maybe a metal verse into a dubstep drop. It's like, this section is metal and then this section is, you know, bass music or whatever. Or the sounds are sitting on top of each other, but it just no one's cracked the code yet, man. No one's cracked the code.
It's hard, man. Yeah. I'm like balls deep in the process right now. I'm like, that's why I was saying I'm a little like fired up again, like back in the studio, like trying to cook it up with this guy who's helping me mix it. Cause like, that's personally what I've noticed, where when I like the edit the most, it's when it's the most natural sounding. So I don't think I've necessarily fully cracked it, but I that's kind of my goal with the project, is to fully merge them in a way that is just the highest quality ever. That's kind of my goal.
Good, man. Well, best of luck to you. I hope that you crack the code. We need it. It's an exciting new space, man. What are you seeing in it? Like, I've seen, you know, this genre being labeled rock and electronic music. Like, it's still relatively underground. I mean, you're in LA, you're in a cool place where there actually is a little bit more culture perhaps there, but like, where do you see the state of this genre right now? Because to me, it still seems like it's very, very new and still very emerging.
I think it just lacks I kind of, where I'm trying to position myself is to be one of the like pioneers of it, in a sense. And granted, 100%, I'm not the first to do it. I won't be the last. So I don't want to be like, I'm so pioneering. No, I just mean a clear cut, you know, version. And that's why I'm trying to do Alt Rave, is because similar to like the emo night guys and whatever, it creates a community, and I don't want it to just be about me. I want to influence other people to do the same goal, which is like, yo, let's stop making crappy rock parts or crappy electronic parts, and let's like do this shit for real. There's absolutely no reason to, you know, I think that's what, you know, house and there's a part of house that when it originated, it was really shittily, you know, sped up or slowed down samples, which is a fantastic, you know, I'm not saying that those are bad. There's so many classics that have that sound. So I don't want to really take away from it necessarily. I just mean what it's evolved into and cleaned up into this nice, really high production quality. That's where you end up with really classic dance hits. And I think that's a great thing to aim for. I think some people get afraid of it, you know, gentrifying it in a sense or making it mainstream or, you know.
Yeah.
I've just been in and out of the industry so many times. I've been in underground and I've made pop and I've done everything few and far between that. I just am like, I just don't even care. If I like it, I like it.
Yeah.
So I guess I do want it to kind of be, you know, try and pioneer it a little bit to be a little more mainstream, easier for people to just like come to a show and get it.
You know what though? This is what's been missing, and I think you're doing it the right way. I think it's been producers collaborating with artists. You know, it's like maybe there's like the metal collab, but it's like the electronic producer has been the one doing all the production, and then maybe they bring in the singer from the band or get some guitar parts. But I think it's got to be that it's the producers working with the producers. Like, who are the actual engineers and the metal producers, not in the band, but the guys behind the board that are making that shit sound so dialed in. Those are the guys you really got to be working with. So I think you're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm literally pretty much today like sending stems of this song I have to him for him to reproduce some of it to like dial it in. So I'm like, this is actually my first attempt at doing that exact thing. I'm sending it to a mixing producer, not an artist necessarily. So you're spot on.
And
we'll see.
Tell me more about Alt Rave. This is I saw you just threw a party, and this is like a new brand that you're starting. Is there a label that's coming with it? What's the vision for Alt Rave?
It's so young that I don't really feel, I guess the word would be rushed anymore. And maybe the past me would have been like honed in on like, whoa, rock's coming back. I gotta splurge right now and go crazy and catch the wave. But the more I've like kind of, I keep using the word surrender, but I feel like the more I've kind of just like let be, the better the outcome has been. So yeah, of course, eventually I want to be a label, collective, and an event. 100%. As it stands, I had like kind of a private event just for the homies and a few friends of friends. And it was just to test a concept. And I was like, damn, we could have done it bigger. And we pulled it off so good. I was like, shit, we literally could have sold 250 tickets, maybe 300 and packed that place out. But we kind of just kept it safe. You know, we didn't want to piss off the owner of the Pure Space. You know, it was just like, it all around was a nice, tidy thing. So next time we do it, I'm like, oh, I want to scale this.
Yeah.
I kind of curated the lineup with homies that I've worked with this year.
I saw you had my boy High Society out there.
Yeah, man.
And I think Micah Martin as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah, dude.
Exactly.
Those guys are rad. I saw High Society post on his stories, and he was like he was showing the party, and then he was in a fucking jail cell. There was like, it was like, what was this? Like an abandoned jailhouse you guys threw this party in?
I've actually done a couple music videos there. Like COVID, I went there and did a music video when it was just like, that was when it was easy because nobody was booking stuff, and it was like, if you went in with a mask, you could shoot a video for super cheap because we were trying to support and we were all trying to like keep certain stuff moving for people. And I remember I was one of their like first customers. So that was 4 years ago. And then I kept seeing, I was like, wow, they're crushing it. People keep booking it. And then they remodeled and they added jail cell. They added all these rooms. So then I was like, hey, like, can we test out like a 50-person event? Because I didn't know how they were going to take it. And they're like, yeah, we'll figure it out. No problem. And I was like, I'm a professional. Like I literally tour. We'll have security. We'll have clean up everything easy. We didn't sell alcohol. It was like, you know, no liquor license. We didn't do anything like too official. We just were like trying to prove to them. And it went really well because their spot is sick. And everybody that was there, I feel like we all felt, we were like, ooh, we could have like even gone crazier. But it was like a safe bet to just kind of like, hey, let's just make this family and friends. But yeah, man, that's kind of the goal is like the event community part of it is more important. And even if, I'm Nitti, the head of Alt Rave, I think it's more of like Skrillex and Alsla. Like, all the other people on Alsla are just as cool. Granted, Skrillex is the pioneer and the head honcho, whatever, but like how he acted and how, you know, Diplo to Matt Decent, they've always been wanting to collaborate and enjoying that collaboration and also helping the other artists develop and not just, you know, I think that's kind of a key I've learned from Wes and probably from seeing like how Sonny did also, where it's like they cared about what the other artists were releasing. Yeah. And I mean that in a positive way. It wasn't just like, yeah, do whatever you want, I'll make money off of you. It was like, yo, let's all fucking do this the right way. Yeah, you know, and so that's kind of what I view Alt Rave as, like my way to help influence a generation to do this shit to the best of our ability and not just make half-assed rock metal edits. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's what's making the crowd not care.
Yeah.
Because we're all half-assing it. You know what I mean? There's a reason why certain genres of EDM blew up more in certain time periods is because those producers took it more seriously and they literally made the quality better. So if everybody keeps making crappy rock edits, it's never going to move forward. We literally need to treat this like a fucking Grammy-nominated music. Like, we have to put that type of care into it. You know what I mean? So that's kind of my goal, is like the craft part of it, where it's like, yo, the rock, metal, emo part of it plus the electronic part of it are just all 10 out of 10. You know what I mean? I don't want any more garbage edits and half-done bullshit. You know what I mean? That's kind of where, granted, I've done them too. So I'm saying that like against myself. Like, I'm holding myself accountable for sure.
Yeah. So rad, man. It's such an exciting vision, and I'm really pumped that you are putting the energy into it. I definitely see you, leading the charge and creating the space, you know, for, I think, what the industry needs. There is a whole generation of guys like myself that are fucking metalheads as equally as we are ravers, and we love both those worlds, and there's still a lot of room for growth there. So really excited to see you leading the charge, and I look forward to hearing what you do with Alt Rave, man. That's going to be pretty rad. So
thank you, man. I appreciate you having me.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah, dude, thank you so much for hopping on. I'm glad we got to connect, and stoked to see what you create from here, dude.
All right, dude. Appreciate you.